A rough-looking man called Ben tried to grab the Royal Guard's gun, thinking he could scare the steady soldier. But when a gunshot went off, he froze. What happened next amazed everyone watching. Here's the whole story. But first, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe to our channel if you respect the Royal Guard. The late afternoon sun made long shadows across Buckingham Palace's grounds as Ben Smith came out of the crowd. He was as disruptive as a stone thrown into a calm pond. Tourists moved away, parents pulling their kids closer as he pushed through the group. His arms, covered in tattoos, and his rough knuckles told of fights that had nothing to do with duty or respect. His heavy boots scraped loudly against the courtyard stones, each step challenging the calm and dignity of the area. A faded jail tattoo showed above his collar, proof of time in prison, though he hadn't learned his lesson. His eyes, cold and sharp, focused on the Royal Guard standing nearby. He didn't see the symbol of hundreds of years of tradition, but what he thought was an easy target. The guard stood perfectly still. His red coat was a bright splash of color against the grey stones of the palace. His shiny brass buttons caught the fading sunlight, each reflecting the care taken to keep the uniform perfect. His tall hat, a bearskin, sat at the correct angle, and his ceremonial gun was held exactly as generations of guards had held it before. Two older ladies, seeing Ben approach, quickly moved away from where they were taking pictures. A dad gently pulled his interested son back, seeing the signs of trouble brewing. The usual happy chatter of tourists became worried whispers as Ben's plan became clear to the crowd. "Well, well," Ben's voice, rough from shouting in prison yards, carried across the courtyard. "What's this?" His lips curled into a nasty smile as he looked at the guard's spotless appearance. The difference between them was huge. Discipline against chaos, honor against disrespect. Two ex-soldiers, their own medals on their jackets, had been explaining the guard's job to their grandkids. They stopped talking, their experienced eyes watching Ben with the tiredness of men who know real danger when they see it. The older one touched his medals, a habit from times of expected trouble. The guard stayed still, his eyes looking straight ahead with firm discipline. But there was something in his posture, a slight tension only those who knew what to look for would see, that showed he was ready. This wasn't just a show, this was a trained soldier seeing the signs of a problem. "Look at this," Ben said to the quickly shrinking crowd, his voice full of cruel amusement. "Standing there like a toy soldier? Think you're important, do you?" The air seemed to get thicker with tension as Ben started to circle the guard, like a hunter looking at its prey. "You think that uniform makes you tough?" Ben's voice echoed across the courtyard, getting unwanted attention from the remaining tourists. He moved closer to the guard, stepping into the space that respect and tradition had always protected. All dressed up like a Christmas tree. The guard's eyes stayed fixed forward, his posture perfect. But there was a new tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. The brass buttons of his coat caught the fading sunlight, each one reflecting years of service that Ben was about to insult. "Look at this outfit," Ben continued, his voice full of disgust as he pointed at the guard's uniform. "Red coat like a circus clown. Silly hat that probably weighs more than your head." He circled closer, his heavy boots scraping against the stones. "Bet you feel really important standing here all day pretending." The two ex-soldiers had moved closer, their faces grim. The older one's hand stayed on his medals, not in pride now, but in anger. His friend's jaw tightened, years of army training stopping him from stepping in, at least for now. "You know what I think?" Ben raised his voice, playing to the uneasy crowd that couldn't look away. "I think this is all a show, a tourist trick." He stepped even closer, his breath visible in the cooling air. "Bet that gun isn't even real. Probably a plastic toy they give you to make you feel like a real soldier." A young boy tugged at his mum's sleeve, asking quietly why the bad man was being so mean. The mum quietly told him to be quiet, pulling him back towards the safety of the crowd. But Ben saw this and smiled coldly. "Yeah, kid, look closely!" he shouted. "This is what your tax money pays for. Some guy in a costume pretending to be a soldier." He turned back to the guard, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "But we know the truth, don't we? Under all this fancy stuff, you're nothing. Just a puppet, playing your part in this little show." The guard's discipline stayed strong, his eyes fixed on a point far away. But those watching closely might have seen his knuckles turn white on the ceremonial gun. 8 years of army service, including fighting in wars, had taught him to see threats, and Ben was quickly becoming more than just annoying. "What's wrong, soldier boy?" Ben mocked, standing right in front of the guard. "Cat got your tongue? Or are you just not allowed to talk without permission from your bosses?" His scarred hand reached out, fingers close to the guard's chest. "Let's see what happens if we pull your strings." The older ex-soldier took a half-step forward, but his friend stopped him. Both men had seen enough fighting to know this situation was on a knife edge. The guard's stillness wasn't weakness, it was the controlled calm of a trained soldier judging a threat. "You stand here day after day," Ben continued, his voice becoming genuinely angry, as if the guard's calm silence was a personal insult. "Looking down on people like me, thinking your fancy uniform makes you better than us." He spat on the ground near the guard's shiny boots. "But I know men like you. Take away the costume and what's left? Nothing but another man who bleeds like everyone else." The evening air had grown colder, but it wasn't the temperature that made people shiver. There was something in Ben's manner now, a coiled tension that spoke of coming violence. His fingers flexed at his sides, scarred knuckles turning white as his teasing turned into something more dangerous. "Tell you what," he said, taking another step closer. "Why don't we find out what's real under all this show?" His hand moved towards the guard's chest, where shiny medals caught the dying light. "Let's see what happens when we pull back the curtain on this little act." Ben's hand reached out, fingers grabbing the first medal on the guard's chest. "Nice collection of cheap metal you've got here," he sneered, deliberately shaking the military decorations. "What did you do to earn these? Stand really still for a really long time." The medals, each one showing acts of bravery in war zones, clinked together under Ben's rough handling. Medals earned in Afghanistan, awards for courage under fire, signs of sacrifice paid for in blood and sweat, all now being disrespected by a man who couldn't understand their true meaning. "Look at this one," Ben continued, flicking a medal with his scarred finger. "Probably bought it at a fancy dress shop, didn't you?" His other hand reached up to grab the collar of the red coat, the perfect fabric crumpling under his grip. "All of this is just dressing up, playing soldier while real men do real work." The guard's eyes stayed forward, his posture steady. But there was a dangerous stillness in his manner now. It wasn't the stillness of ceremony, but the controlled readiness of a hunter, the kind of stillness that war veterans would know as coming before swift and decisive action. The ex-soldiers watched with growing tension, their own army experience telling them this was quickly going beyond disrespect. The older one's hand had moved from his medals to his side, where years ago a gun would have been. His friend's face had hardened into the look of a man calculating chances and angles, old habits from battlefield days coming back. "Even these buttons," Ben continued, running his hand roughly across the brass, smearing their shine with his fingerprints. "All for show, just like you." His voice had become darker, the teasing becoming more physical. "Standing here like a statue while I mess up your pretty costume? Can't do anything about it, can you?" The guard's ceremonial gun hadn't moved, but its presence seemed more important now. The weapon, while staying in its traditional position, somehow carried a new weight in the tense air. Those who knew their military history might have remembered that these guards were all combat-trained soldiers, and their guns, while ceremonial, were far from just for show. Maybe we should see what's under this silly hat. Ben's hand moved upward, reaching for the bearskin hat. Bet it's not even real fur. Probably some cheap. The guard's stance changed, very slightly, a movement so small that only the ex-soldiers noticed it. But it was enough to make Ben pause, his hand inches from the bearskin. For a split second, something basic in him saw the warning signs that his arrogant mind was too proud to understand. But the moment passed, and his sneer returned. "What's wrong, toy soldier? Worried I'll mess up your costume?" His hand dropped to the gun's barrel, fingers trailing along the metal. "Wonder what would happen if someone took your little toy away. Bet that would ruin the whole show, wouldn't it?" His fingers wrapped around the gun's barrel, the metal cold against his scarred hand. "Let's find out just how real any of this is," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Time to show everyone what happens when you pull back the curtain on this little play." The guard moved with the smooth skill of a snake strike. Years of combat training turned ceremonial stance into deadly action. In a heartbeat, the gun, far from being the toy Ben had mocked, became a weapon in the hands of its master. With a swift, controlled movement, the guard spun, the gun's butt end going up, hitting Ben hard in the stomach. The crack of wood against flesh echoed across the courtyard like thunder, followed by Ben's shocked gasp as the air was forced from his lungs. He stumbled back, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he had made a big mistake. His boots scraped against the courtyard stones as he struggled to stay on his feet, one hand clutching his middle where the gun's impact had left its message. You can't!" Ben wheezed, trying to act tough even as he fought for breath. "That's assault." But the words had no power now, not after his own actions had been seen by dozens of people. The guard had already gone back to his ceremonial stance, the gun back in its proper position, his movements so precise it almost seemed like he had never moved. But there was something different in his manner now, a deadly readiness visible to anyone who knew what to look for. The two ex-soldiers exchanged knowing looks, seeing the controlled power of a trained soldier who had given a clear warning. Ben straightened slowly, his face red with a mix of embarrassment and anger. His prison-hardened pride couldn't accept that his attempt to show power had failed so badly. The guard's quick response had not only hurt him physically, but had shattered his idea of being in control. "Think you're tough, do you?" Ben's voice was rough, but the threat in it had doubled. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, knuckle tattoos stretching across white skin. "That was a lucky shot. Let's see how you handle a real fight." The guard stayed still, but his stillness now had a different quality, not the stiffness of ceremony, but the readiness of a fighter. His eyes, still fixed forward, seemed to hold the cold calculation of someone who had faced far worse threats in real war zones. "I'm going to take that gun," Ben said, his voice having the desperate edge of a man whose pride demanded violence, "and show everyone here what a joke you really are." He shifted his weight, preparing to jump. His prison yard experience had taught him the value of surprise, but he didn't realize he was no longer dealing with an ordinary person. Several tourists backed away quickly, sensing the coming violence. A mum hurried her children behind a stone pillar, while others reached for their phones, not to film, but to call for help. The ex-soldiers stood their ground, their own combat experience telling them this situation was about to get worse. Ben's muscles tensed as he prepared to spring forward. Time to end this little game. The guard's manner changed, almost unseen, but the change was huge. Gone was any pretending of ceremonial duty. This was now a combat-trained soldier reacting to a clear threat. The gun, while keeping its formal position, was now held with the readiness that spoke of years of battlefield experience. A wise man would have seen the warning signs, A smart man would have backed down. But Ben, driven by wounded pride and a lifetime of solving problems with violence, was neither wise nor smart. In that moment, his body coiled like a spring, preparing for what he thought would be a triumphant show of his power over this toy soldier. What he didn't understand, as he got ready for another attack, was that he had crossed a line that separated show from deadly serious reality. The guard's next response would teach him that lesson in a way that no one present would ever forget. Ben charged forward with the desperate speed of a man with nothing to lose. His boots scraped against the courtyard stones as he ran. Prison yard instincts guided his movements. Fast, aggressive, committed to overpowering his target through sheer force. But before he could complete his second step, the sound of a gunshot cracked across the palace grounds. The guard had moved with practiced skill, the ceremonial gun rising to firing position in one smooth motion. The warning shot split the evening air like thunder, echoing off the palace walls with a power that no ceremony could match. The smell of gunpowder cut through the cool air, sharp and real and utterly serious. Ben froze mid-stride, his body locked in place like a statue, a cruel twist given his earlier teasing. His face, previously twisted with anger, now showed something completely different, pure basic fear. The realization that the gun was very real, very functional, and in the hands of someone who knew exactly how to use it hit him like a punch. "Don't move!" The guard's voice carried the steel of combat command, each word precise and full of deadly promise. His gun stayed aimed with unwavering steadiness, the barrel now seeming to Ben like the entrance to a very dark future. Ben's hands rose slowly into the air, his fingers shaking, not from the cold, but from the sudden, terrifying understanding of just how badly he had misjudged the situation. The tough prison act cracked completely, revealing the coward that often hides beneath such aggressive fronts. I didn't," he stammered, all pretending of toughness gone like morning mist. The man who had been so keen to show his power now looked pathetically small against the backdrop of Buckingham Palace. The guard's manner had changed completely. Gone was any trace of ceremonial duty. This was a combat veteran reacting to a threat with practiced skill. His stance spoke of years of battlefield experience, each small movement designed for maximum effect. "On your knees," the guard ordered, his voice carrying the kind of authority that bypasses thinking and triggers immediate obedience. It was the voice of someone who had given similar commands in situations where lives hung in the balance. Ben dropped to his knees so quickly that the impact rattled his teeth. His palms stayed raised, fingers spread wide, desperate to show submission. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the cool evening air, running down to sting his eyes. The two ex-soldiers watched with grim satisfaction, recognizing in the guard's response the kind of disciplined force they had known in their own service days. This wasn't a show. This was the real face of military training, revealed only when circumstances demanded it. "The rifle you were so keen to test," the guard's voice carried across the now silent courtyard, "has been used in real war zones, just like the man holding it." The slight shift in his stance spoke volumes to those who understood such things. "This uniform you mocked. It's been worn in places where respect isn't a choice. It's the difference between life and death." The evening air seemed to vibrate with tension as approaching sirens announced the arrival of the police. But no one moved, no one spoke. The scene held, the guard standing rigid and ready, Ben kneeling in trembling submission, and the crowd watching in stunned silence as reality stripped away all pretending. Armed police officers swarmed into the courtyard, their movements precise and coordinated. They took in the scene with professional skill, the kneeling suspect, the guard's combat stance, the stunned crowd. No words needed to be said. The situation spoke for itself. "Armed police! Stay down!" The lead officer's command was almost unnecessary. Ben hadn't moved a muscle since the warning shot had shattered his world of assumptions. As they approached with handcuffs ready, his shoulders slumped in final defeat. The guard lowered his gun with military precision, going back to his ceremonial stance as if the whole incident had been nothing more than a brief interruption of duty. But the crowd had seen behind the curtain of ceremony, had seen the steel beneath the tradition. As the officer secured Ben's wrists behind his back, one of them spoke to the guard with professional politeness, tinged with respect. "We'll need a statement, sir. This is a serious offense, trying to take a gun from a member of the Queen's Guard." The older ex-soldier stepped forward, his campaign medals catching the last rays of sunlight. "I saw everything, officer. Deliberate provocation, physical contact with the guard, attempt to seize a military weapon. The guard showed remarkable restraint." His companion nodded gravely. "Could have been much worse. In my day, anyone trying to grab a guard's rifle would have gotten more than just a warning shot." Ben, now thoroughly subdued, was helped to his feet. The swagger was gone, the tough guy persona shattered. His eyes couldn't meet anyone's gaze as the officers began to lead him away. Each step seemed to carry the weight of his humiliation. "You never know, do you?" One tourist whispered to another, all this time thinking they were just there for show. The guard had already resumed his post, his posture perfect, eyes forward, ceremonial duty restored. But there was something different now in how the crowd regarded him. The tourists who had been taking casual photos earlier now stood at a respectful distance, their expressions thoughtful. A young boy tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, is that why they say never to touch the guards?" The father nodded solemnly. "They're real soldiers, son. Everything about them is real. The uniform, the rifle, the training. What we see is just the surface of their duty." As Ben disappeared into a waiting police vehicle, the older veteran approached the guard's position. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Instead, he drew himself to attention and offered a crisp salute, soldier to soldier, warrior to warrior. The gesture spoke volumes about mutual understanding and respect. In an age where tradition often faces mockery and ceremony is dismissed as mere performance, the day's events served as a stark reminder. The Queen's Guard stand as living embodiments of values that run deeper than their ceremonial duties suggest. Honor, discipline, and the readiness to act when those values are threatened. For those who wondered why these guards maintain their stoic presence day after day, the answer had been demonstrated with crystal clarity. They stand not just as guardians of a palace, but as defenders of principles that have weathered centuries of challenges. Their ceremonial duty masks a core of steel. Their practiced discipline contains capabilities that few would wish to test. The next time you visit Buckingham Palace and see these guards standing their watch, remember this. Behind every pristine uniform beats the heart of a warrior. Each polished button, each precise movement, each moment of ceremonial stillness represents years of training and dedication. Their silence isn't weakness. It's the quiet strength of men who know exactly what they're capable of and choose to serve with dignity rather than display. What would you do if faced with such blatant disrespect? How far should tradition bend before steel must show through? Perhaps the real question isn't why these guards stand so still, but rather what it takes to make them move, and whether anyone would truly want to find out. The guard's stance remained perfect as darkness settled over London, his duty unchanged by the day's events. After all, that's what real strength looks like, not in the ability to provoke a response, but in the discipline to stand ready, watching, waiting, protecting values that will outlast any who dare to challenge them. If you found this story inspiring or thought-provoking, don't forget to show your support. Hit the like button to let us know you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends who love stories about unshakable resolve. And subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories just like this one. And remember to press the bell icon so you're the first to know when a new video drops. Before you go, be sure to check out the other videos appearing on your screen now. You won't want to miss them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.